The Delhi Sultanate. The state, set up by the Turks towards the end of the 12th century in northern India, gradually developed into a powerful and highly centralized state which, for some time, controlled almost the entire country, extending as far south as Madurai. Foundation of the Muslim state. The Mamluks, who had already conquered Persia, came to conquer India around 1180. They were able to defeat the Rajput kings of India by 1192 and took over northern India. By the end of the 12th century, Muhammad Ghori was successful in occupying in Delhi and started a dynasty of rulers which, together with some later dynasties, came to be called the Delhi Sultanate. The Sultanate of Delhi, said to have been formally founded by Qutbuddin Aibak. The Delhi Sultanate began as a process of assimilation and accommodation between the Muslim culture and traditions of Central Asia and the Hindu culture and traditions of India. Following were the reasons of their success. First, absence of any powerful central authority in India. Second, disunity, mutual jealousy, and lack of military system in the Rajputs' rule. Third, religious zeal among the Muslims and lack of unifying force among the Hindus. In 1206, when Muhammad Ghori was killed and Qutbuddin Aibak became the ruler of Hindustan, the Sultanate included many of the important towns and strategic places in northern India. This was the beginning of the slave dynasty in India. Five dynasties ruled at Delhi from 1206 to 1526. First, the Slave dynasty. Second, the Khilji dynasty. Third, the Tughlaq dynasty. Fourth, the Shoyid dynasty. Fifth, the Lodi dynasty. Of these five dynasties, the first three were of Turkish origin, and the origin of the Shoyid is disputed, but the Lodis were Afghans. Slave dynasty 1206 to 1290. The first dynasty of the Sultanate has been designated by various scholars as the Slave dynasty or the Mamluk dynasty or the Ilbari dynasty. They were known as slaves because many of them were either slaves or were the sons of slaves who had become sultans. Only three of them, that is Qutbuddin Aibak, Iltutmish, and Balban, were slaves during their early life. The term Mamluk signifies a slave born of free parents. Qutbuddin Aibak 1206 to 1210. Qutbuddin Aibak was a favorite slave of Muhammad Ghori. He was a Turk of the Aibak tribe, which means in Turkish language Lord of the Moon. He had played an important role in the Battle of Torain and in the subsequent Turkish conquests in northern India. He was enthroned at Lahore in 1206. In a sense, he may be regarded as the first Sultan of Delhi, even though he did not assume the title of Sultan. His capital remained at Lahore. He laid the foundation of Qutub Minar and Quat-ul-Islam Mosque in Delhi, after the name of the famous Sufi Saint Khaja Qutubuddin Bakhtiyar Kaki. He strengthened his position by matrimonial alliances with the influential rival Turkish chiefs. For his generosity, he was given the title of Luxbaks, meaning giver of lux. Iltutmish 1210 to 1236. Aram Shah, the son of Aibak, became the ruler, but soon he was overthrown and Samsuddin Iltutmish was enthroned as the Sultan. He was son-in-law of Aibak. Iltutmish acquired a certificate of legitimacy from the Caliph at Baghdad. He belonged to Ilbari clan, so his dynasty is known as Ilbari dynasty. Iltutmish was the real founder of Delhi Sultanate. He made Delhi as his capital in place of Lahore. He saved Delhi Sultanate from the wrath of Genghis Khan, the Mongol leader, by refusing shelter to Khazarem Shah, whom Genghis Khan was sieging. Iltutmish defeated Tajuddin Ildos in the Third Battle of Torain and killed him. During 8 years between 1226 and 1234, he conquered Ranthambore, Mandawar, Bayana, Jalore, Gwalior, Malwa, Bhilsha, Ujjain, and Bengal. Iltutmish organized the Ikta system. He introduced reforms in civil administration and army. Iltutmish was the first Turkish ruler of Delhi who organized the army of the Sultanate as the king's army. That is, an army centrally recruited, centrally paid, and centrally administered. He maintained a large standing army on a permanent basis. He was the one who gave the country capital, a sovereign state, a monarchical form of government, and a governing class or nobility, known as Turk-i-Jahalgani or Cholisha. He set up an official nobility of slaves known as Jahalgani. Iltutmish issued the Tanka and the Chital coins for the first time. He patronized Minhas ul Shiraz, author of Tabakat-i-Nasiri. He died in 1236. Rajia Sultana 1236 to 1240. Rajia was the first and the last female sultan of Delhi or medieval India. When she rose to the throne, the prestige of Sultanate had sunk very low. The capital was under attack from the four governors of Lahore, Multan, Hansi, and Badaun. She discarded the purta, adorned the male attire, and held the open court. The proud Turkish nobles thought it beneath their dignity to be governed by a woman. Thus, in 1240, Rajia became a victim of a conspiracy and was assassinated near Kaithal. The contemporary historian Minhas described her as a great sovereign endowed with all the admirable attributes and qualifications necessary for kings. Ghiasuddin Balban 1265 to 1287. Balban ascended the throne in 1266. He was the consolidator of the Sultanate of Delhi as he broke the power of Jahalgani. He was conferred the title of Ulugh Khan by Sultan Nasiruddin Muhammad Shah after repelling Mughal invasion in 1246. He took many measures to establish good governance in the state, for which he adopted the famous policy of blood and iron. He was the first sultan to put forward his divine theory of kingship. The army establishment was separated from the rest of the civil department. A separate military department known as Diyan-e-Wizarat and Diyan-e-Ars was established, which looked after the forts and other defenses of the state and deployed the royal forces at strategic places. He impressed the people that kingship was vice regency of God on earth. He also set up a network of news writers and spies throughout his dominion. They reported to the Sultan about all the important developments in their respective areas of posting. Amir Khusro, the parrot of India, adorned his court. Fall of the slave dynasty. On Balban's death, his grandson Kaikubad succeeded him to the throne at the age of 17 or 18. Although Balban nominated Kai Khosrow as his successor, but the nobles raised Kaikubad to the throne. During his short reign of 3 years, he became paralyzed. Jalaluddin Khilji, the Arich-e-Mumalik, routed the Turkish nobles. Kaikubad was murdered in his palace and Jalaluddin ascended to the throne, the rule of Ilbari Turk came to an end in 1290. Khilji dynasty 1290 to 1320. The Khiljis were probably of Turkish origin but had become Afghan in character. The replacement of Ilbari dynasty by Khilji dynasty is termed as Khilji Revolution because it marked the end of power by the Turkish nobility and racial dictatorship. Jalaluddin Khilji 1290 to 1296. Jalaluddin was the founder and first king of the Khilji dynasty. He was the first ruler of the Delhi Sultanate and clearly put forward the view that the state should be based on the willing support of the governed. As majority of people of India were Hindus, it could not be purely Islamic state. He followed mild and generous policies. In 1294, Alauddin Khilji, a nephew of Jalaluddin, invaded Ramchandra Dev, the ruler of Devgiri in south. Ramchandra Dev was defeated and Alauddin returned with an immense booty. Jalaluddin himself advanced to Kara to give warm welcome to his nephew, who murdered Jalaluddin and assumed himself suitable for the throne in 1296. Alauddin Khilji ascended the throne after getting his uncle Jalaluddin murdered. He was the first Sultan of Delhi who separated religion from politics. In Deccan, Alauddin's army, led by Malik Kafur, defeated Yadavas of Devagiri, Kakatiyas of Warangal, Hoysala of Darasamudram, and Pandus of Madurai. He caused himself to be called the second Alexander in the Kutba and on his coins. He ordered that the wives and children of all the mutineers should be kept into prison. This was the beginning of the practice of seizing women and children for the faults of men. He captured Chitor, which was renamed Khizribad after the name of his son Khizir Khan. Reforms by Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin introduced the first permanent standing army of medieval India. He abolished iktas of royal troopers and started payment of their salaries in cash. He introduced the tag, branding of horses, and chehra, means description of the soldier. Administrative reforms by Alauddin Khilji. In order to avoid problems created by the nobles, Alauddin issued 4 important ordinances. The first ordinance was aimed at the confiscation of religious endowments and free grants of lands. By the second ordinance, he reorganized the spy system. An army of informers was created and their duty was to spy on all what happened in empire and to submit reports to the Sultan. The third ordinance prohibited the use of wine and drugs. The fourth ordinance, issued by Alauddin Khilji, laid down that nobles should not have social gatherings and they should not intermarry without permission. He also discarded ulema in the political affairs of the Sultanate. Market control and economic reforms by Alauddin Khilji. Alauddin Khilji introduced a new market regulation to provide essential commodities at reasonable rates to raise resources for the army. He declared all the land in the area from Lahore to Kara as Khalisha land and raised the land revenue to 1/2 of the gross production in Khalisha. He imposed 2 customary taxes, grazing and house tax. He adopted the principle of land measurement for determining land revenue. Alauddin sought to fix the cost of all the commodities. For this purpose, he set up 4 markets at Delhi. One market was for food grains, the second was for costly items, and third was for horses, slaves, and cattle, and fourth market for merchandise. Each market was under the control of a high officer called Shana, who maintained a register of the merchants and strictly controlled the shopkeepers and the prices. The check on market was kept by 2 other officers, the Dhyani Riyasat and Shana-e-Mandi. Malik Kabul was appointed as the Shana-e-Mandi, whereas Nazir Yaqub was appointed the Diwan-e-Riyasat. All goods for sale were brought to an open market called the Shara-e-Adal. Very strict punishments were prescribed for cheating and underweighing. Shana-e-Mandi was appointed to keep a strict observation. The Sultan received daily reports for these markets from 3 independent sources: Shana, controller of market, Baris, intelligence officers, and Munshis, secret spies. Alauddin ordered that all land was to be measured and then the share of state was to be fixed. The post of special officer called Mustakharas was created for the collection of revenue. The peasants had to pay half the produce as land revenue. The booty captured during war was called Khanima, of which the state was to receive 1/5 share called Kums. The rest, 4/5, was to be divided among the soldiers. Alauddin revised this and the state was now entitled to 4/5 as Kums, 1/5 being distributed among the soldiers. Kutubuddin Mubarak Shah Khilji. Mubarak Shah Khilji was the third and last ruler of the Khilji dynasty. He was the son and successor of Alauddin Khilji at the age of 18. He was originally appointed protector to his 6-year-old younger brother, who was the king. Within 2 months, Kutubuddin blinded his brother and ascended the throne. He started his rule by releasing all taxes and penalties imposed by his father. He launched an expedition to Devagiri and annexed it to the Delhi Sultanate. He was the only Delhi Sultan to call himself the Caliph. Kutubuddin Mubarak Shah was the weakest ruler of the dynasty. He was murdered by Khosru Khan. The fall of the Khaljis. The Khalji Sultan Khosru Khan was killed by Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq, governor of Dipalpur, when he tried to oppose the rebellion by Ghazi Malik. This marked the end of the Khalji dynasty and the rise of Tughlaq dynasty at the throne of Delhi.